Hello, everyone. I'm Dina Hadad, Vice Chair of Cost Action K-Peritia, accompanied today with Dr. Blazej, co-leader of Working Group 1. Together, we are pleased to welcome you to the third webinar in our action series of Conversation in Context. It's titled Culture Expertise and Media, Challenges and New Frontiers.
Conversations in Context is a space we launch to reflect critically on cultural expertise and the way it is mobilizing across different social, legal, and institutional settings. This session features the work of Professor Małgorzata Lisowska-Magdziarz from Jagiellonian University in Krakow, presented in dialogue with Dr. Süleyman Akçıl from Zonguldak Bülent Ecevit University.
Together, our speakers explore how cultural expertise is being shaped, challenged, and reconfigured in relation to media and communication, particularly in the context of rapid digital transformation. The discussion also opens up broader questions about how research and practice in cultural expertise are moving into new and emerging frontiers.
We are delighted to have both speakers with us for this conversation. And with that, we'll hand you over to Dr. Akçıl and Professor Lisowska-Magdziarz to begin an intriguing discussion.
Welcome, everyone, to our K-Peritia Cost Action webinar series under Working Group 1 Theory, Conversation and Context. Today, we have the honor of welcoming two very important participants in our action. We have a very special sort of conversation to take place with regard to cultural expertise and media. Something relates to our current sort of essential elements and new frontiers. In this very intriguing dialogue, we have today with us Professor Małgorzata Lisowska-Magdziarz from the University of
Jagiellonian University, Krakow.
Jagiellonian University, Krakow. She is a media scholar, semiologist, conducting the research on media semiotic, participatory uses of media, mediatized culture, media practices, and media education and literacy. She has authored already over 12 books and 100 research papers dealing with the topic of media semiotics, media uses, persuasive communication, mediatized consumption practices, and media literacy. In dialogue with Professor Margaret, we have Dr. Süleyman Akçıl. He is a chair and an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology, Counseling and Guidance at
Zonguldak
Bülent
Ecevit
University. He completed both his MD and PhD in consular education and supervision at Kent State University, USA. His research emphasizes the cultural dimension of psychological well-being, focusing on particularly accumulative stress, resilience, mental well-being, and social media use among diverse populations. He has published extensively in internationally reviewed journals, authored and edited books, and contributed to volumes of scholarly addressing cultural and contextual challenges in counseling. With this sort of great background of our both speakers today, no further ado, and the floor is for you.
Hello. As Dina mentioned, I'm Süleyman Akçıl. I'm an assistant professor in counseling in Zonguldak from Turkey. Today, we are going to talk with Margaret and within the framework of K-Peritia project, which is the cost action, and the number is 22101. We are a great network, and I've been involved in this project for the past couple of months. And the network is actually dedicated on exploring and defining the evolving landscape of cultural expertise in Europe. So today, we are actually, our aim is to examine specific but increasingly critical intersection, which is the relationship between cultural expertise and media. So we aim to kind of demonstrate how media literacy functions not only as a set of communication skills, but as a specialized form of expert knowledge, which requires assist legal decision making in our digital age. So we are with Margaret here, and we are going to talk a little bit about her work in cultural expertise and media. She wrote a chapter about it. But before we delve into the framework, I want her to kindly introduce herself, her background, and the central argument of maybe her work with cultural expertise in media.
Okay, so I think, well, you know, first thing first, the very idea of cultural expertise in media and communication stemmed from my experience as sometimes court expert, but most of the time media educator, where whatever we would call media competences are largely taken for granted by communicating people. People tend to think, even in institutional sets, in institutional backgrounds, context, people tend to think about their media and communication competence as something that can be taken for granted. Since we use media at everyday basis, today's media are very intuitively designed, so it seems really easy. We think, people think they don't need to any special kind of knowledge. Whereas the truth is this is whole subset of knowledge and competences that is becoming more and more complicated. And I'm sad to say our competences and our expertise, even in academia, doesn't really manage to develop as quickly as technology and communication devices develop. So I took my chapter into my hand. I have it here. And the book was out in 2023. We started talking about it in spring 2020, I guess, or even 19. And in terms of the development of media-based communication, this is really, really long time. So every year, literally every month, brings new problems with that need to be solved. And there's probably among our listeners is my friend Agnes Sałek, who deals with AI presence in media and the consequences thereof. And the things she's able to show us, these things are not even, it's difficult to qualify the legal status. We don't even know whether it should be law that will deal with this, or we just should assume that this is how it will be already. I will give you the example in a moment, but I'm looking at my chapter and what it makes me think about. First thing first, we started then with in 2020 with the definition of mediatization. It means the situation, the process where communication media are not only makers and disseminators of information entertainment, but they are also the entities with their own political, economical goals and their own logic. Meanwhile, within few more years, we entered the stage of something that Professor Andreas Happ, one of the major scholars on mediatization, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, calls deep mediatization. The situation where media are not only disseminator of information and not even only the space for people to disseminate their own messages, we'll talk about it later, but also they generate the knowledge by themselves in algorithmic way, which means we don't really exactly know who we are dealing with, while the large part of media-based communication is the result right now of automatic generation of content and of algorithmic designing of the content based on our media habits and so on. So it's much more that providing people with information and advice. We'll talk about truth in information a little bit later, or representations of the world and public agendas, and so on. There's many areas here that are extremely important, and they call for awareness and competences. But then we said that media opens a space for various forms of social activity, online engagement, rapid growth of knowledge. This is all true. And already in 2020s, we were writing about the potential spread of hate speech and disinformation. I would add today that I used to be an optimist back then. Well, I even wrote 2 books on fandom as particular set of media practices, allowing the space for people's creativity that was suppressed before that. So participatory culture can be enormous democratizing force. Right now, I'm not as optimistic, because what happened within last few years is enormous spread, enormous reach and scope of disinformation and hate speech coming exactly from those participatory spaces. There's disturbing process associated with this, which is normalization and desensitization to the hate speech. We were also doing the shared project. There's a book about hate speech in Polish media, because language is very important. So what we could see was pushing the boundaries of can actually be said or not be said on media, what would be perceived by people as abusive form of communication. Then we said the media content is itself a source of legal issues, because it can be deceptive, manipulative, compounding prejudices, damaging personal rights, provoking violence. And so legal disputes might be associated with offensive quality of the content itself, or potential representation of social reality, or responsibility of content providers and space providers and technology providers for particular sorts of content. Today, our major problem that is actually compounding whatever was true just 5 years ago is that AI and the content forms created with the use of artificial intelligence entered the game with astonishing speed. There's enormous proliferation of the messages that actually need ascertaining, assessing, as far as harm is concerned, as far as the very definition of truth and responsibility. So my example taken from my friend Agnieszka is she's now dealing with the problem of AI-generated fake, obviously fake, images and biograms of Holocaust victims. There's plenty of them circulating in the shared space. They are, some of them are obviously not true. Well, AI is not so clever, so sometimes you can see this, but sometimes they really look like something true. This is so-called AI slop. Yes, this is what Agnieszka says. And also, they are actually all the time mixed with real photographs, names, and so on. So there is not even the name of this for this kind of a problem. And somebody, I would say, needs to assess the harm. Of course, individually, the families of people whose names are being used in this process with fake images probably could, take offense individually. But this is the question of the harm to the very concept of historical truth and to what we actually deem accurate representation of some social phenomena. This is only one of a plethora of such problems. So this is something new that happened not very long time ago, but is already causing particular problems. Then we have the problem of, we said, journalists in the courtroom and potential results for the outcomes of legal cases associated with so-called trial by media and the messages disseminated by legal journalists and so on. Well, we now deal also with the problem of people equipped with their own recording devices, also creating the image from the very courtroom and immediately spreading enormous discussion. So we not only have the possibility of trial by media, also trial by social communication, by social media. There's particular problem right now associated with phenomenon of amateur investigators, also using the shared interactive space to speak about legal problems. Then we have the impact of media coverage. This deals with the convergence problem and cross media messages crossing the boundaries of various media. Well, transmediality right now is the phenomenon that allows for enormous, very difficult to even assess spread, amplification and spread of the content. So also of damaging stereotypes, of inaccurate representation of various social issues, and so on. So we also deal with the problem of indirect influence on media, but also interactive media and media institutions on the proceedings and outcomes of legal cases. And then there's also the problem, which I think is the most difficult and concerning one, that we actually deal with some dilution of responsibility. We quite often deal with very offensive content in media that calls for some justice, but there's no one to be held responsible for it. And what we did, and what was probably the problem at the very outcome of interactive era, was that we allowed those big, huge entities, interactive entities, to self-defined as the providers of technology, and not as media that could be held responsible for the messages that are distributed. So actually, I'm saying now, and I will probably repeat once or twice, what is really needed from lawyers is one of more, how do you call it in I will remember in a moment. I tried what's the name is for this sort of suit, class action suits. Yes. So I would think the awareness, the public good would call for, because whoever ever tried to individually counter, for example, some offensive or dangerous content in media knows very well that this doesn't work. Usually the answer is, this doesn't violate the politics of our platform. We are only technological entity. We are not responsible, and so on. So I think class action suit is needed, or even more than one, to somehow deal with those growing problems. So this is my take on what we wrote, what we discussed just 5 years ago, and which needs already some add-ons.
Yes, these are great. These are great insights, and I was thinking like 5 years is a long year, if you can say, but it's not actually, with this rapid growth in technology and advancements in especially AI technology. So when I was preparing myself to this webinar, I was thinking all about these, and thinking about whether this is a right moment to talk about cultural expertise and media. And you're right. This is where we are right now, and our nation, the whole world is in a transformation process. Societies changes, and if you look at it from a different perspectives, we can define it by 3 different characters, which you already mentioned. One of them is mediatized society, and we say that like media is no longer just a mirror of reality, but it actively shapes how politics and the law function. This is what you noted as well. And the second one, the participatory culture. People are no longer just watching; they're involved within different platforms. Social media is one of them, with their posts, comments, and their shares as well. So it's very difficult to differentiate if this is a private conversation or public statement as well. And AI, we are living in an AI-driven society right now, and we don't know whether the things that we face are created by AI, they are completely real or not. So this is very difficult at this time. So this comes to the needs maybe for cultural expertise to interpret meaning and evidence. So we need to know, we need to do the media literacy very well to kind of know the background, the intent behind the digital interaction. So if you see a post, we need to understand if this is a real post or not. We need to know more about the context. If the context, let's say emoji, if the emoji mean to a specific culture, it's a good thing or a bad thing. And the authenticity, as we discussed, as you said, we need to know if the video or the picture posted is real or it's a deep fake. So these are really, really deep questions that we need to answer. So if we go back to your chapter again, what else would you like to share? I know you have cases in your chapter as well. Would you like to tell us more about those?
Yes, well, there are three cases outlined in the chapter, and the logic was what Livia asked me to do. One is very local from Polish media, one has, I would say, regional scope, and one concerns global context. And they also epitomize three different sorts of expertise that is needed and questions that have to be asked. One of the first one, which is typically like limited to the Polish context, although I think we could probably find many such cases in all mediatized societies. So I chose it as something quite typical, was the conflict between Gdańsk, commune of Gdańsk. Gdańsk is a big city in the north of Poland, and Gdańsk's, it's called officially the nation. Well, the entity representing men and women migrants in Gdańsk region. So foundation that helps migrants to integrate, also provides, I would say, cultural visibility and so on, against Polish public television. Well, the shameful part is that this was public television, that we wouldn't expect such actions from, but the problem was extremely demeaning and fear-mongering image of the commune of Gdańsk and migrant men and women of Gdańsk on Polish television, which not only was offensive towards particular public bodies like the Commune of Gdańsk and the association, but also was actively fear-mongering and inducing the hostile emotions towards the very idea of migrations. But so there were like various levels of harm. So the Commune of Gdańsk entered in the Commune of City Gdańsk. This is Council of Immigration in Gdańsk, entered in conflict with Polish television, and there were media experts. There was media expertise involved. Who was called as experts were journalists, ethics of professional journalism that was breached in this material, semiologists, verbal and visual indicators of hate speech, also the problem of rhetorics and particular possible outcomes of this sort of messages was also pondered in court. There was also the expertise needed to assess the possible reach and scope of such messages, because we could say, okay, this is just television. Hardly ever anybody watches television anymore, which is already not true. It is still a very powerful medium, but those messages were also posted on Polish television site and they got lots of traction on the internet. So this is the situation when transmediality gives immediate reach to the messages that otherwise in previous times would be just incidental and their influence would be limited to one place and one moment. So as a result, the regional court of Warsaw ordered the station to apologize to the commune of Gdańsk and to pay damages to the Center of the Support of Men and Women Immigrants in Gdańsk. Well, the problem is that once those messages became intercepted by internet, the fragments also misinterpreted elements of those short films keep coming back in various that being like recalled by various entities and individuals wanting to express their hostility towards migrants. And also towards commune of Gdańsk because of political situation in Poland, where commune of Gdańsk is quite famous for their liberal and open politics, as opposed to right-wing politics of Polish government at that time. This was the situation that at one point led to the knife attack on the mayor of city Gdańsk, resulting in his death, which was associated with hate mongering and so on. The second case was, so here we have hate speech, basically hate speech, and also the possibility to give it bigger traction and larger scope because of media traveling across the borders of various technologies. The second problem was associated with the definition of public and private person on the internet. This is something that's quite important matter right now, because we entered the situation when the very definition of public person is being somehow expanded. Because on one hand, we have people who are also in most legal systems are deemed public persons because of their official activity as politicians, for example, as journalists and so on. On the other hand, however, we have user-generated content where some people become so-called influencers. Are influencers public or not? But also where internet can be used for political activism by various persons who, I'm afraid, are not even aware of the consequences of going public online with their opinions and so on. Here, the problem was compounded by the fact that there were two minors involved. The question, this was quite complicated, but the question actually, it all amounted to the question whether two teenagers voicing their opinions on the internet with possibly quite a big popularity among their peers do become, as a result of it, that public persons, so they are not exactly protected, their rights, their privacy, their families, their opinion among their peers should be protected or not. Well, we can see growing presence of children and young people on the internet. The question is who they are. And the question actually is who is public person in this situation. Those two teenagers were the object of abuse, and their families, their parents and so on, in traditional media and online by a right-wing politician who then tried to justify this abuse with the fact that they went on the internet with their opinions, so they are actually public personas. The more so, they meanwhile became quite popular exactly as a result of that abuse. So in this situation, the case had many stages. Finally, the Supreme Court had to uphold the opinion that those kids are not public persons, and also that in case of the politician, there's conflict between freedom of speech and the protection of the rights of minors, for example, and neither one nor the other is unconditional. So, but of course we stay with the open question, what to do with the presence of minors online. And there's actually for me, what was interesting was the very fact that there was no clear legal definition that would be used in this situation, but the court had to call for various media experts to reach this verdict. The third one was concerned the global problem. This is the case that was in the European Court of Human Rights since 2015, and it bounces back and back. The question is, who is responsible for hate speech on social media platforms? In this particular case, it was anti-Semitic hate speech. European Court of Human Rights gave not one, but two, actually at this point, I guess 4 verdicts about this. But we still have this problem that the entity that actually gives us the possibility to post anything on any media platform can be, from a legal point of view, let me, how does it called? Can be the content provider. And most of portals, for example, representing TV stations or newspapers are basically content providers. So they are relatively more responsible for the commentaries that people post on their sites. That's why most of the time those comments will be moderated, because content providers do not really want to enter legal conflicts, and also are most of the time unwilling to create hate speech. But there's also something like network provider or access provider or service provider, or even the conduit provider. So someone who's just a hosting service. And now the question is, who's responsible for example, this AI slop we've been talking about, or for possible hate speech on various platforms? Who do you even hold responsible for it? Actually, the platform providers in this case were using the argument that they actually do moderate the content, but on the other hand, it is known that they were actively encouraging people to post and also earning money. No matter what kind of content was posted. Also, the moderation was automatic. We already know this is also something that, for example, Facebook says they do, that most of the time the content is somehow pre-moderated with the help of AI, and also which in itself is extremely problematic phenomenon. Actual live content cleaners, so people who deal with this most of the time enormously psychologically damaging content, and remove certain things by hand. But of course, the amount of communication is so huge that it actually would be very, very expensive to really do something about it. So most of those huge platforms, they just say, okay, we are just technology providers. We are platform providers. We are not responsible. Also, we don't want to make censorship. And so again, what we need is class action suit, actually. Some bodies just going for battle to establish the responsibility of various levels of content technology or space providing in media. So this is not only Polish, this is not even regional, this is absolutely global problem, global phenomenon right now.
Yes, definitely a global problem. It happens in Poland, it happens in Turkey as well. We know that a lot of people are being affected by this, and that there has to be something to kind of stop this. And you mentioned there are the vulnerable groups, not only in Poland, but also in Turkey and in all around the world, actually, such as like migrants, elderly, minors, as you said. These are very interesting cases, and we need to know what we do with those cases, especially when we talk about vulnerable groups and AI and, you know, the new technology. They mostly have limited media literacy, digital literacy. So they don't know what they are doing sometimes. They have a lack of capacity in online environments. They don't know how to defend themselves against disinformation. So they become targets of you know, potential dangerous people. And they don't know what the digital footprint is. They don't know anything about, you know, whether a post is real or not. So when I think all about this, and after reading your chapter, I was thinking that what competencies we should have, like especially when we think about the cultural expertise, cultural experts. So what does a media cultural expert look like then? What competencies they have to possess to aid, you know, the court effectively?
Well, I tried to enumerate the media literacy skills being potentially useful to the courts. And I tried to go through it, and this is, first thing first, this is very contextual. Sometimes we deal with the content, sometimes with technology, sometimes with, as you said, participation gap or competence gap. But what I would call for, first thing first, would be the very awareness. Because if you don't know something, you sometimes don't know that you don't know it. So it actually calls for very careful consideration of what could be the impact of media, what would be the role of communication competences of people, what would be also the impact of big political or economical bodies, realizing their own interests via communication. But I gave some sort of assessments or to those media skills. There's a whole page of them. And I said, the first important for me today would be that to need to know and understand the institutional processes of the creation of and dissemination of the content. Also, the responsibility of various individuals, organizations, bigger bodies, and so on. So, because those institutional processes are extremely complicated today, the first level of awareness is even who owns what level of responsibility on various levels of organization of the system can be assigned to this or other individual or body. And I know some of my colleagues who deal with this problem, and I know that this is growingly, increasingly complex knowledge. And sometimes it's very difficult to detangle the responsible one from this entire network of dependencies, associations, and so on. The second, I would say, would be to understand that there is some sort of systemic co-conditioning between media and various parts of the social system, politics, economy, and so on. The third would be the understanding of the processes of creation of user-generated media, dissemination of user-generated. Somehow we are at the point right now where user-generated media is more problematic than in institutional broadcast media. Maybe because we have the long history of legal regulations as far as, for example, television is concerned. So when I think the Commune of Gdańsk and the organization of migrants of Gdańsk had relatively simple task because the guilty part was exact television station. And of course, it called for the assessment of the reach of those hateful messages. But in today's media, it might be difficult to even find out who could be responsible for this kind of messages. And the fourth, most important would be to be able, concerns what you said, Süleyman, about participatory gap and about competences gap. So actually the court needs media scientists, but also maybe some media scholars that would work as cultural brokers between the parties that may come from various backgrounds where this awareness and ability to use mediatized communication for our own good may be uneven, unequal. I remember our first seminar when I was invited by Livia, a little bit without knowing why media would be involved in this entire cultural expertise project. There were plenty of people telling about the stories where the media broker has even to explain to someone who's already involved in some legal conundrum, what the court might want from them, what their legal standing is, and what obstacles they may face. This is the question of, I would say, bridging very, very different levels of competences here. And I think the courts should be aware of this and also not take for granted, not assume that media and communication competences about everybody are more or less equal and similar.
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree, especially when we think about the competencies of cultural experts. They have to be more analytical and technical. They need to be able to answer the questions, especially in the court. We know that a lawyer, if they see a video, they look at it as a video. But if it's an expert, they can see the code behind that video. So we need to understand that as well. You kind of mentioned and talked a little bit about the media institutions, but when I asked this question about them, how would you answer? Like, what responsibilities should media institutions hold in participatory culture, and how can cultural expertise help assess accountability, foreseeability, and social impact?
Well, I'm not sure I have a very good answer to this question. I'm just sure that there should be responsibility at all. I would say, well, using very, very simple anecdotal example, if someone is harmed at my home, I somehow feel responsible for it. If someone gets offended by someone other in my flat, in my apartment, this is also part of my responsibility to prevent this from happening again. So if we have the situation where Mark Zuckerberg or whoever it is, I of course use him figuratively, although I'm absolutely sure he's perfectly aware of the problem. If they are aware of the fact that they facilitating with their technology, facilitating problematic communication behaviors of various parts, they should be made responsible. So I would say, first thing first, even cash providers or just technology providers, if they know what the results will be, if I know what the results will be of my hateful actions, I can be made responsible. So I think I would start with the responsibility of actually everyone on every level of organization of the circulation of media. But I'm not a lawyer, and I'm also perfectly aware of enormous might, enormous power that those institutions have, even though there's one person behind it. Look what happened with Twitter. Twitter that was, well, okay, not very brilliant, but not particularly harmful communicator, is right now the site where there's enormous hate mongering going on all the time. And this is the result of just change in moderation politics and the very attitude of the owner of this technology to the messages. He clearly realizes his own political agenda here. So why wouldn't he be deemed responsible? Well, because he's just a technology provider. Yeah. But of course, first thing first, I'm not a lawyer. And second, I don't think even lawyers have a clear answer to it. Except that I'm sure that we shouldn't agree to all those owners of media not being defined as media. Because
absolutely, I fully agree, Margaret. Thank you so much. I think this reflection is very much insightful, and I mean, the points you have raised in dialogue with Süleyman are incredibly enriching, especially if we put them against the structure of cultural expertise. If we look into the need, because exactly in the way you put it forward, the fact that we are really dealing with something that goes beyond mere legal sort of knowledge, dealing with issues that are on ongoing sort of development, that means even those who are legal experts, legal personnel in a way, still need the opinion of experts to be able to identify where responsibility lays and how does it really progress in such a context. This is particularly why cultural expertise or media expertise in this particular sort of context is very much relevant and needed in order to highlight that there is a need for further, more than just having the law and its application, to identify responsibilities, to identify evidence, and to establish all sorts of ramification built upon all of these elements. I think that's started to be an insatiable sort of dialogue. I really loved every single aspect you highlighted, both of you, and I enjoyed really all of this. But I wonder, Süleyman, if you'd like to add anything before we open for a bit of questions from the participants.
No, I actually love the conversation as well. Thank you, Margaret, for your insightful ideas and, discussion about the topic. I loved it, and nice to meet you as well here.